All right, so you guys know, you know how we always get those gadgets that have those ads all over? Well, we're diving into one of those today. This D6 camera, they're really pushing it hard.
You see it everywhere.
Everywhere you turn, it's like D6 this, D6 that. So today we're gonna, pull back the curtain a little bit. We're gonna do a deep dive. We're gonna figure out if it's really worth all the fuss.
Yeah, sometimes the marketing is, more interesting than the gadget itself.
Totally.
So we're gonna be your guides to figure out if this is the real deal.
Love it. So let's start with what they're telling us, right? We always go straight to the source. Their website, and by the way, massive shout out to all of you. This is one of the ones you guys have been sending in, so we are listening. You wanted D6 deep dive. You got it. Okay, so from their marketing material, 3-lens CCD camera, it boasts 1080p video, touchscreen, even 128 gigabyte TF card slot. Like, on paper, that sounds pretty good.
It sounds like a lot of the other cameras out there.
Exactly. So is this stuff actually good, or is it just, marketing jargon?
Let's find out.
Let's break it down.
Yeah. Starting
with that CCD sensor, I mean, what is that? Is that like a good thing?
Yeah, so CCD stands for charge coupled device. Basically, it's, without getting too technical, is how the camera actually captures the light to create the image. Now, CCDs, back in the day, they were like the big deal. Known for really accurate colors, working well in low light, but you don't see them as much these days. Most cameras, especially in this price range, they're using CMOS sensors.
Interesting. So are they like using old tech, or is there a method to their madness,
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
To really know, we'd have to dig deeper into the specifics of the CCD they're using.
Right.
But it's definitely something to keep an eye on as we go through this.
Okay, noted. Next up, 1080p video. Well, they're shouting it from the rooftops. I mean, it sounds impressive, but I know 4K is becoming more and more common now. Is 1080p still a big deal?
It depends. Like, what are you using the camera for, right?
Yeah. True.
1080p is still like this standard for a lot of content, especially if you're sharing stuff online or even, watching it back on devices that don't have a 4K screen.
Yeah.
You'll get a decent amount of detail. It's just not going to be as crazy sharp as 4K.
So for the average person, for someone who's not like making a movie, 1080p probably does the job.
Yeah, most likely. But here's the thing, even within 1080p, the quality can be totally different depending on the lens, the sensor, how they're processing the image.
Okay, so it's not just about the number, it's about how they're actually like making that image.
Exactly.
All right, so we got to look into that. Video quality deep dive, adding it to the list. Now, they also mention anti-shake technology, which I don't know, sounds kind of fancy, but what does that even mean?
A good question, because they all say that.
Right. They all have some version of it.
It basically means the camera's trying to help you out if you've got shaky hands.
Oh, okay.
Which, let's be honest, most of us do.
Yeah, especially if I'm like trying to film something and I'm walking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's super helpful for vlogging, anything handheld. Now, there are different levels of anti-shake. You've got digital stabilization, which is done with software.
Okay.
And then you've got optical stabilization, which actually involves physically moving parts in the lens.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm guessing optical is better, but probably more expensive.
Bingo. Digital can be pretty good, but it sometimes makes the image look a little weird.
Yeah.
Optical is usually smoother, more natural looking.
Yeah.
Now, they don't actually say which kind the D6 uses.
So more digging to do. It's like they're being intentionally vague.
Oh,
All right, before we move on from the specs, one more thing. 128 gigabyte TF card slot. Okay, full disclosure, I'm not totally sure what a TF card is.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't actually.
Is that like a normal thing in cameras these days?
It's becoming more common, especially in those smaller cameras like action cameras and such. A TF card, sometimes called a micro SD card, it's basically just a teeny tiny storage card.
Okay.
Think of it like a much smaller version of those SD cards you might have in your phone or other devices.
And 128 gigabytes, that's a lot, right?
That's a lot of storage.
How many photos are we talking? How many cat videos?
A lot of cat videos. It depends on the file sizes, obviously, like you're filming in high def, low def.
Sure.
But 128 gigabytes. For most people, that's going to be plenty. It seems like they're expecting people to use this camera a bunch, maybe film for hours, without having to constantly offload stuff or switch out cards.
Interesting. So maybe they are going for that more casual user, someone who values ease of use and, just wants to film and not worry about storage.
Possibly.
It's kind of like they're trying to appeal to, everyone with this whole it does everything approach.
Exactly. And that makes me wonder, who is this D6 camera really for?
It's a great question and a perfect transition because that's exactly what we're diving into next. So it's got all the bells and whistles, but they haven't really said who it's for, Like, who's the target audience here?
Right. Their marketing is all over the place.
It's like they threw everything at the wall and hoped something would stick.
Exactly. Which can be a good thing, or it can be maybe not so good.
Yeah. Are they trying to be everything to everyone? Because that's usually a recipe for disaster.
Right. A jack of all trades, master of none kind of situation.
Exactly. So how do we figure out who this camera is really for? Where do we even start?
Well, we can play detective, right?
Yeah.
We look for clues.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
Put on our detective hats. What do we got?
So they keep mentioning capturing life's adventures in everyday moments, which tells me they're going for a more casual user.
Okay, someone who's not necessarily a professional photographer.
Right. More like someone who just wants to document their life without a lot of fuss.
Right. Point and shoot. Keep it moving.
Exactly. And remember how they highlighted the storage space? 128 gigabytes?
Yeah.
That says they're expecting a lot of footage, a lot of photos, not just the occasional snapshot.
Makes sense. So maybe someone who's really active on social media, vlogging, that kind of thing.
It's definitely possible. They did mention vlogging and live streaming a few times.
They did, didn't they? And they made a big deal about that OTG function, whatever that is.
Oh yeah, OTG stands for on the go.
Yeah.
It basically lets you connect other devices to the camera, like a microphone or an external light.
So maybe they are going for that vlogger, content creator type, but someone who's just starting out, maybe? Someone who doesn't need all the fancy, expensive gear.
That's a good point. It could be a good entry-level camera for someone who wants to experiment with creating content.
Right. Dip their toes in the water without breaking the bank.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, even though we're being a little cynical about the marketing, there's nothing wrong with that.
Of course not. Not everyone needs a top-of-the-line, professional-grade camera.
Exactly. For a lot of people, a camera like this, with its ease of use and decent specs, might be the perfect fit.
Right. It's all about finding the right tool for the job. Or in this case, the right camera for the user. But I'm still hung up on that battery life. 2 hours. Even for a casual user, that doesn't seem like a lot.
It's definitely something to consider. Maybe they're assuming people will carry extra batteries.
Maybe, but they didn't really emphasize that in their marketing.
True, they didn't. And that's actually a perfect example of what we were talking about earlier.
Being intentionally vague.
Exactly. They're highlighting the good, but kind of glossing over the potential downsides.
So how are we supposed to get the full picture if they're not giving us all the information?
That's where we come in. We dig a little deeper, look beyond the marketing fluff.
All right, let's do it. What other mysteries does this D6 camera hold? Okay, so we've talked about the specs, we've talked about the target audience, but there's still this one thing, this one little detail that just seems kind of off.
Yeah, the battery life.
It's like they tried to sneak it in there, hoping we wouldn't notice.
2 hours, that's not a lot.
Especially for a camera that's supposed to be all about capturing life on the go.
Right, like are you supposed to just carry around a pocket full of batteries?
It makes you wonder if there's something else going on.
Like maybe the battery is super small so they can make the camera more compact.
Possibly, but they really played up the portability factor. You'd think they'd mention that.
You're right, you'd think so.
It's a head scratcher, Like,
Yeah.
What's the deal here?
It makes you wonder if maybe, and this is just a thought, but maybe they're planning on releasing like an upgraded battery pack later on.
Ooh, interesting theory, like a pro version or something.
Exactly. Something that extends the battery life for those longer shoots.
That would make sense, especially if they're trying to appeal to a wider range of users.
Right. You start with the basic model and then offer upgrades for those who need more.
Okay, I could see that. But it still feels like they're being intentionally vague, Like, why not just say that up front?
Transparency isn't really their strong suit, is it?
Not really. But hey, that's why we're here, right? To read between the lines, do the detective work.
Exactly. We're like the consumer whisperers.
I like that. So what's the takeaway here for all our listeners who are thinking about this D6 camera?
I'd say go into it with your eyes wide open.
Do your research. Don't just take their word for it.
Exactly. Read reviews, compare it to other cameras in the same price range.
And don't be afraid to ask the tough questions.
Like, how long does this battery actually last in real-world use?
Right. Because 2 hours, that's barely enough time to film a cat video.
And we all know how important those cat videos are.
Absolutely essential. But seriously, folks, we hope this deep dive has been helpful.
We've thrown a lot of information at you, but hopefully you've learned a thing or two.
About the D6 camera, about marketing tactics, about the importance of being an informed consumer.
And hey, if you have any other theories about that battery life, we're all ears.
Hit us up on social media. We love a good tech mystery. Until next time, happy gadget hunting.